The first time I noticed something was off in my new neighborhood was when my Amazon package went missing. At first, I thought it was a simple mistake. Maybe the delivery guy dropped it at the wrong house. Maybe someone picked it up by accident. But when I checked the tracking details, the status was clear: delivered. Left at front door. I had been home all day. I was working in my study, just a few feet away from the front entrance. If a package had been dropped off, I would have heard it. I checked my porch twice, then a third time, hoping I had somehow missed it. But there was nothing there. Just an empty welcome mat and the quiet hum of the suburban street in front of me. My stomach twisted slightly, the kind of unease that tells you something is wrong even before you can explain why. I stepped back inside, pulled out my phone, and opened my security camera app. The footage played in crisp clarity. The delivery driver walked up my porch, placed the package down, snapped a photo for proof, and left. Just 2 minutes later, another figure appeared. A woman in a pink tracksuit, blonde bob-cut hair, oversized sunglasses perched on top of her head. She walked up my doorstep like she owned the place, bent down, picked up the package, tucked it under her arm, and walked away without hesitation. She didn't check for cameras. She didn't glance around to see if anyone was watching. It was smooth, practiced. Like she had done this before. I zoomed in slightly. Even though her face was partly obscured by the sunglasses, there was no mistaking her. Karen. I had met her on the day I moved in. She had appeared on my driveway like she had been waiting for me, smiling in that artificial way that felt more like an evaluation than a welcome. She introduced herself, not just as a neighbor, but as the one who keeps an eye on things around here. Not an official title, not part of any HOA, because this neighborhood didn't have one, just self-appointed authority. At the time, I had dismissed her as nosy but harmless. Just another suburban busybody with too much time on her hands. But now, here she was, stealing my package in broad daylight. I replayed the footage again, watching closely. She didn't hesitate. She didn't check the street. She didn't even seem rushed. That was the part that really got me. This wasn't someone making a mistake or grabbing a misplaced package by accident. She knew what she was doing, and she was completely comfortable doing it. My jaw tightened. I took a deep breath and saved the footage. This wasn't going to slide. I had dealt with difficult neighbors before, but stealing was something else entirely. If she thought she could walk up to my house and take whatever she wanted, she had another thing coming. I grabbed my phone and my keys, stepped outside, and walked straight across the street to her house. Her front yard was pristine, almost unnaturally so. The grass was cut at an exact even length, the flower beds perfectly symmetrical. A small stone path led up to her porch, where a white rocking chair sat perfectly aligned with the front window. It was the kind of house that looked picture-perfect from the outside, but something about it felt too perfect, like everything had been arranged not for comfort, but for presentation. I knocked twice, firm and loud. There was a long pause, then the door opened. Karen stood there in the same pink tracksuit, holding a glass of iced tea in one hand and her phone in the other. She didn't look surprised to see me. If anything, there was a flicker of something in her eyes, mild amusement, like she had been expecting me. "Well, hello there," she chirped, as if we were old friends meeting by chance. I didn't waste time. "Karen, I have security footage of you taking my package from my porch." For a fraction of a second, her expression wavered. Then, just as quickly, she let out a light laugh and shook her head. "Oh, that package," she said breezily. "I was just keeping it safe for you. I saw it sitting out there for a while, and I didn't want someone to steal it. Porch pirates are everywhere these days, you know." I stared at her, dumbfounded. She wasn't even trying to deny it. She had walked onto my property, taken something that wasn't hers, and was now acting like she had done me a favor. My fingers curled into a fist, but I forced myself to stay calm. "If you were keeping it safe," I said, keeping my voice level, "why didn't you knock on my door and tell me? Or leave a note?" She shrugged, taking a sip of her tea. "I was going to. But you're here now, aren't you?" I exhaled slowly. "Then give me my package." Karen's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. She turned slightly, stepping back inside. "Oh, I'd love to, really. But there's a little problem." I felt my patience snap like a thread stretched too tight. "What problem?" She sighed dramatically, as if I were the one causing trouble. "Well, you see, I opened it. Thought it might be something important, and I wouldn't want it sitting out all day if it was, say, a medication or something urgent." I clenched my jaw. "She opened it? What was inside?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "Oh, just some unexpected items," she said, waving her hand. "Nothing I would have ordered, that's for sure." My stomach twisted. I knew exactly what I had ordered. And if she had really opened that box, she must have found it. For the first time since I knocked on her door, Karen looked slightly less sure of herself. Just for a second, but I caught it. That flicker of uncertainty. I stepped forward, staring her down. "Where is it?" She took another sip of tea, her fingers tightening slightly on the glass. Then she smiled, but this time, it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Well," she said, tilting her head, "that depends on how much you really want it back." I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm, but inside, my anger was bubbling like a storm waiting to break. Karen stood in her doorway, one hand on her hip, the other still gripping that glass of iced tea like she had all the time in the world. The smug look on her face told me she thought she was in control of this situation, that I would just let this go, that I wouldn't push back. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I tightened my fists and steadied my voice. I wasn't about to let her drag me into some ridiculous back-and-forth game where she could twist my words and act like she was doing me a favor. I didn't have time for her nonsense. My package wasn't hers to take, and the fact that she had the audacity not only to steal it but to open it like she had any right was beyond infuriating. This wasn't about the package anymore. This was about control. She was testing me, seeing how far she could push, seeing if I was the kind of person who would roll over and let her do whatever she wanted. She had probably done this before to others. Maybe she had gotten away with it. Maybe people in this neighborhood were too polite, too afraid of making waves. But I wasn't like them. I took a step forward, and for the first time, Karen's grip on her glass tightened just a little. It was subtle, but I caught it. That small shift in her expression, the flicker of doubt behind her eyes. She wasn't expecting me to stand my ground. She was expecting me to be passive, to back down. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. I squared my shoulders and didn't break eye contact. I let the silence stretch, long enough for her to feel it, long enough for her to realize she wasn't in control here. The moment dragged on, and something shifted between us. That self-satisfied smirk on her face didn't look so confident anymore. She exhaled slowly and glanced over her shoulder, as if considering something, before finally stepping back into her house. I followed, my jaw clenched, my pulse pounding in my ears. The moment I stepped inside, I understood exactly what kind of person Karen was. Her house was immaculate, but not in the way that made it feel welcoming. It was the kind of spotless that felt unnatural, like no one actually lived there. Everything was arranged too perfectly, the furniture barely looked touched, and there was no sign of personal warmth, no family photos, no scattered books or signs of daily life. It was like walking into a model home, staged for appearance rather than comfort. The air smelled faintly of artificial lavender, too strong, almost suffocating, like she had sprayed it moments before I arrived. The silence in the house was heavy, pressing in on me, and I suddenly had the feeling that I was stepping into a place I wasn't supposed to be. Karen disappeared into another room, leaving me standing near the doorway, and I had to resist the urge to glance around, to search for where she had hidden my package. The seconds stretched long. I could hear her rummaging through something, maybe a drawer or a cabinet, and then there was a soft thud. She reappeared, holding the opened box in her hands. It was crumpled at the edges, as if she had yanked it open carelessly, and I could already tell that whatever was inside had been disturbed. But she didn't hand it to me. She held it just out of reach, tilting her head slightly, her expression unreadable. Her silence was louder than any words she could have spoken. I knew then that she wasn't just going to give it back and apologize. She wanted something. I took another step forward, and her eyes flicked to my face, watching for a reaction. The air between us felt charged, tense in a way that had nothing to do with a simple stolen package. There was something else at play here, something deeper, something calculated. My stomach tightened as my mind raced through the possibilities. She had already hinted that what was inside the package had surprised her. That meant she had seen it, touched it, maybe even tried to figure out what it was. But if she was standing here now, holding onto it instead of just handing it over, it meant she thought it had some kind of value. Maybe she thought it was expensive. Maybe she thought it was something rare. Or maybe she thought it was something she could use. The idea made my skin prickle. Had she kept it because she wanted leverage? My patience snapped like a frayed wire. I didn't care about whatever ridiculous game she was trying to play. I didn't care what kind of power trip she was on. All I cared about was getting my property back and making sure she understood that this would never happen again. I reached forward and grabbed the package from her hands before she could react. Her fingers tightened for a second, resisting, but I pulled harder, and she let go with a sharp tsk, like she was disappointed I hadn't played along. I didn't break eye contact as I ripped the rest of the box open, my breath steady but my muscles tense. Inside, just as I had expected, was exactly what I had ordered. But the look on Karen's face told me that she knew something. And whatever it wasn't good. That I gripped the box tightly, feeling the weight of it in my hands, but the real weight pressing down on me wasn't physical. It was the way Karen was looking at me, like she had a secret she wasn't ready to share yet. Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, more like she was amused by something I hadn't figured out. My fingers pressed into the cardboard, feeling the slight indentation from where she had ripped it open before me. The tape had been sliced cleanly, not like someone who had just taken a peek, but like someone who had fully inspected the contents. My pulse pounded harder because I already knew what was inside, but Karen's reaction told me she had expected something else. And that was what unsettled me. The room felt stifling, the artificial lavender scent curling around me like something designed to smother. I needed to get out of here, but I also needed to know what she was thinking. I had never liked mind games, never had the patience for people who thrived on control, but Karen wasn't just some nosy neighbor with an attitude problem. She had taken my package for a reason. Maybe at first, it was just Karen being Karen, inserting herself into situations that didn't involve her. But now, there was something else. I turned toward the door, refusing to acknowledge whatever twisted satisfaction she was getting from watching me, but before I could take a step, she moved. Just a slight shift, nothing dramatic, but enough that I felt it. The kind of movement that wasn't meant to block my way but to let me know she could if she wanted to. A warning. A test. I clenched my jaw and walked past her, refusing to react, but I could feel her watching me. My skin prickled with the sensation of it, as if her gaze had a weight of its own, pressing into my back. I stepped out onto her perfectly swept porch, feeling the rush of fresh air hit my face like I had been holding my breath without realizing it. The quiet hum of the neighborhood felt different now. Before, it had been just another background noise, the distant sound of cars, the occasional chirp of birds, the rhythmic sprinklers from someone's lawn. Now, it felt like a thin curtain stretched over something darker, something unseen but waiting. I didn't look back as I walked across the street to my house. I didn't need to. I knew she was still standing there, watching me, waiting for some kind of reaction. But she wasn't going to get one. Not yet. I kept my footsteps steady, my grip firm around the box, and the second I stepped inside my house, I shut the door behind me and locked it. I let out a slow breath, forcing myself to unclench my jaw. My pulse was still hammering against my ribs, but not from fear. From anger. I tossed the box onto the kitchen counter, ignoring the dented edges and the torn tape. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to open it again, not yet. Instead, I grabbed my phone and pulled up the security footage from earlier. The video played exactly the way I remembered it, Karen striding up to my porch, her movements smooth and effortless, like someone who had done this before. The way she bent down, took the package, and walked away without hesitation. I rewound it and played it again. And again. Each time, my eyes caught new details. The way she glanced down at the package before picking it up, as if checking for something specific. The way her grip tightened the second she touched the box, like she had just confirmed something. The way she didn't look around, didn't hesitate, didn't second guess. I exhaled slowly, my fingers tapping against the counter. She had been expecting something. She hadn't just grabbed it at random. She had taken this package for a reason. I turned and finally forced myself to open it again, peeling back the flaps, pushing aside the crumpled brown paper. The contents inside were exactly what I had ordered. No surprises, no missing pieces, no tampering that I could see. But the longer I stared at it, the more unsettled I felt. Karen had been surprised by something. Something she thought she would find, something she had assumed would be inside. And when she didn't find it, she had changed her approach. I grabbed my phone again, this time pulling up my email. The tracking information from Amazon was there, confirming the delivery, the time, the proof photo. Everything lined up. But something nagged at me, something I couldn't shake. I scrolled down, checking the confirmation details. The package had been out for delivery at noon. It had been marked as delivered at 12:14. The security footage showed Karen taking it at 12:16. That was what made my stomach twist. 2 minutes. That wasn't enough time for her to just be walking by and decide to take it. That wasn't chance. That was timing. That was deliberate. I clenched my jaw, my mind racing. Either Karen had been watching my house, waiting for the delivery, or someone had told her it had arrived. Either way, that meant something I didn't want to admit just yet. This wasn't random. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the open box, my thoughts colliding in a way that made my skin prickle. I had moved into this neighborhood expecting a quiet life, expecting peace, expecting nothing more than the usual small talk and occasional friendly waves from neighbors. But now? Now, I had a different problem. Because Karen had taken my package for a reason. And whatever she had been looking for, she still hadn't found it. I didn't sleep well that night. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind kept circling back to the same thing: why had Karen taken my package? What had she been expecting to find inside? I had gone over it a dozen times, replaying every detail in my head, trying to make sense of it. She had grabbed the package within minutes of it being dropped off. That wasn't an accident. That was intent. She had known it was coming, or at least had been watching for it. And when she opened it, she had been disappointed. That much was clear. But why? I had ordered nothing special. Just an ordinary household item, something so unremarkable that there was no reason for it to be of any interest to anyone, let alone Karen. I had checked the box multiple times, examined the packaging, the receipt, even the barcode. Nothing was unusual. But the way she had acted, the way she had stared at me when she handed it back, that smug confidence turning into something else, that was what unsettled me. It wasn't just the act of theft. It was the shift in her behavior. She had expected something else to be in that box. I got up early the next morning, the lack of sleep making my body feel heavier than usual, but my mind was sharp. I stepped onto my porch, coffee in hand, scanning the quiet street. The houses were still, curtains drawn, the neighborhood holding on to the last remnants of morning silence. But Karen's house? Her blinds were already open. The white slats perfectly aligned, as if arranged with purpose. It felt like a message, a silent way of reminding me that she was there, watching. I turned away, unwilling to give her the satisfaction of knowing she had gotten under my skin, but as I stepped back inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. It wasn't just the missing package anymore. It was something bigger. She had tested me once. Now, she was waiting to see what I would do next.